Hello everyone, today is November 13th, 2019. My name is Jack and I'm with Paul and two of our very special guests, Aaron and Myles. So Aaron and Myles are from the EOS block producer Greymass, but they have also their own projects and own history. And I think it's quite interesting for them to talk a little about how kind of their personal history, how and then how that got them into EOS, and then we go from there. So just that you were just talking about, you're having these town halls in Steem. So do you want to let the people know a little bit about your background in Steem and how you arrive in EOS?
Yeah, sure thing. Um, I got involved in Steem just a couple months after it launched. I think that was early to mid 2016. I had been paying attention to crypto for a while, a couple years before that, but Steem was the first one where it kind of merged my interests and the work that I was doing at the time, which was
Mm-hmm.
all community software oriented stuff,
Okay.
publishing or community software, stuff like that. So I really started digging into it because it was a content system, well, at least
Yep.
partially. And then I kind of just fell down the rabbit hole of blockchain technologies and got more and more involved. Ended up becoming a witness on Steem, was in the top 21 for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
Started branching out into other cryptos, and obviously as EOS started coming along, it was even more just a little bit interesting because it was less focused on one specific thing and more general purpose. So I had met Scott, who was NEX, the other co-founder of Greymass.
Okay.
I had met him through Steem, and we talked a little bit about it and decided we wanted to launch Greymass and jump into EOS.
Cool, cool. Yeah, I remember, I'm not sure if we met physically. Were you at the Steam Fest in Lisbon?
I was not, but I think Scott was.
Okay, okay. Because I remember there was someone affiliated with the work you were doing there. I wasn't 100% sure, but that's how I first came across the work you're doing
Have been
was
Johan?
it could be.
Maybe.
It could be. But that was when I came across like Steemsurfer and chainbb and all these other works you were doing.
Hmm.
And when I found you on EOS, I was like, wow, okay. I mean, I guess it makes sense. You were like a witness on Steam, but it was just cool seeing you guys on the EOS chain.
Yeah, it's been exciting, and we've kind of built a little. I mean, I think probably about half of our team has some sort of roots in Steam.
Mm-hmm.
And there are like, I know that there are some other people I know personally through Steem that are now parts of other BP organizations. So
Mm-hmm.
this big crypto community kind of mashes up quite a bit, and you kind of see different people spread across different systems.
Cool, cool. So speaking of other people on your team, we have Miles, Miles Snyder. I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right. He is also a strategic advisor at Multicoin Capital. So Miles, do you want to talk a little bit about that and how you got involved with Greymass? And it seems like you were also involved with Steam a little bit. So do you want to get into that?
Oh, no, actually, I had my introduction to DPoS chains through BitShares.
Oh
Um, I,
wow.
I I
Okay.
was paying attention to Steam when it happened because I was familiar with Dan from BitShares and liked his work, and I thought the idea of the social network was interesting.
Mm-hmm.
But originally, I was really drawn in because of the stablecoin aspects of BitShares. So I studied economics in college, and when I actually spent some time in 2014 studying abroad in
Mm-hmm.
Buenos Aires. And
Okay.
when I was there, I met some people who were involved in the local Bitcoin ecosystem. That was kind of my first real introduction to crypto. I'm sure I'd heard about Bitcoin in passing, but hadn't
Mm-hmm.
really taken the time to understand it. But it was really interesting being there because they've had a lot of economic problems over the years, and people there were very interested in the idea of a currency that wasn't controlled by the government.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so that was my first introduction to crypto, and then I discovered BitShares just a few months later, and I was really fascinated by it because
Mm-hmm.
BitShares was the first project that was attempting to do a decentralized stablecoin. So a
Yep.
lot of what you see that's popular today, whether it's like EOSDT on EOS or MakerDAO on
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Ethereum, a lot of those projects can trace their roots back to BitShares and some of the original ideas Dan came up with.
Yeah.
So that was really fascinating to me. I got pretty deeply involved in that project. And then was just kind of paying attention to the crypto ecosystem in general. And then in 2017, I took a job with a company called Multicoin Capital, which at the time was just I was the first employee there. And Multicoin is a crypto native hedge fund. So it was founded by Kyle Samani and Tushar Jain. And it's a hedge fund that invests exclusively in crypto, both primarily on the token side, but also doing things like equity in crypto companies. So I led research there for over a year, and then actually partnered with Tushar and Kyle to start Aurora EOS, which was an EOS block producer. So during my time at Multicoin, and I'd been very familiar with Dan's work from BitShares, had paid attention to Steem, and then when he announced EOS, I became very interested because of the sort of general purpose nature of the project, as well as some of the technological improvements that he had built upon from lessons learned with both BitShares and Steem. So I started covering EOS in depth at Multicoin, doing research, and then eventually left Multicoin to start Aurora EOS, which was a block producer, and then ran Aurora for about 6 months or so before basically merging Aurora with Greymass and joining that team. Aurora was not nearly as high in the rankings as Greymass, and I'd gotten close with the team, and we really found that we really agreed philosophically, and felt like the work that we were doing was pretty complementary. So I joined Greymass and have been there since.
I see. So is Aurora still, is it the focus now entirely on Greymass, or is Aurora still running? But with
So Aurora is no longer a block producer on the mainnet. We unregistered and all that, and it's now, my efforts are exclusively focused on Greymass.
I see. Okay, very cool. So cool. Yeah, so let's get into the deep of it. We were chatting a little bit before, and I'll show you a document. I think the people who are listening to this podcast are kind of very full into EOS, so they probably know you guys, or at least have heard of you guys. And one of the recent things that, with the governance problem, you guys, there was a move a few months back for BPs to give their voters reward. And I remember you guys coming out against it initially. And then as time went on, I think just a few weeks ago, you guys actually came out with a reward program, but you guys still have something to say about this is not a long-term solution, and you guys are not happy with it, but this is the game you guys got to play. Can you guys kind of expand on that?
Sure. I mean, we are still completely against the practice of it.
Yeah.
We think it, like, both philosophically and just economically, it is not a healthy DPoS system.
Yeah.
But right now, with the way things are and the situation we've kind of gotten ourselves into by becoming the biggest, well, not the biggest, but one of the bigger infrastructure providers in the system, is we've become reliant on the rewards that we've been earning as a block producer. So we're kind of being forced into this system right now.
Yeah.
This is something that we're hoping is a very short-term solution. If we can start monetizing our APIs, we're immediately gonna, well, maybe not immediately, but we're going to talk about dropping out of these programs as soon as we can, or as soon as a replacement can be found. I mean, it is what it is right now, and this is the way that EOS is being played, and I don't think everybody understands the long-term effects this is gonna have.
Yeah.
But just we figured this is the lesser of two evils right now. We think our departure from this ecosystem, like if we went off and started exclusively focusing on other technologies, that would be unhealthy for EOS.
Yep.
And it's also unhealthy for us to be participating, or for anybody to be participating in these kind of voting reward systems as they exist today. So we had to make the decision, and the lesser of those two evils was just playing the game for now.
And are you guys earning enough rewards to actually, is it justified if you guys are doing plainly block producer work? Are you guys like does it even pay the basic infrastructure and salary? I imagine not.
It does not. I mean, it can cover the infrastructure, but not really salaries. Like, there's no room for growth in either personnel or infrastructure, really.
I see, I see. So I see you guys are at 57 at the moment. So um, I want to ask you two things. One, kind of in the beginning of EOS, when the voters were kind of more focused on the technical capabilities and community work of the BPs, how high did you guys rank? And kind of the wave of voter reward BPs, how that affected you guys, and how have you guys, after you joined the voter reward program, how's that affected your rank?
The first question, I think we were at maybe 13th at one point.
Yeah.
We spent months in the top 21 as an actual block producer. That slowly started to decline as, not as voter rewards started happening, but as exchanges started to vote.
Okay.
And so, slightly different subject, kind of the same idea that we were moving away from technical producers. We were moving more into this kind of business-centric model.
Yeah.
But it was just a slow decline over maybe the past year or so, to the point as to where we've kind of bounced around in the 50s and 60s right now. And I think for the first time, we actually fell out of the pay rank, sort of, for maybe a little bit. We were kind of straddling the line. So that's when we decided we had to make a decision. A lot of our falling in the ranks does come from kind of the exchanges playing with the votes. And part of it also comes from the whole voting incentivization and vote buying situation.
Has voter reward helped you guys at all? Because you were saying you're between 50 and 60, but that still seems to be the case. So
it has, not by much though. I mean,
it helped us avoid just crossing over into that no pay zone.
Yeah.
I see.
If we weren't doing it right now, we would not be earning revenue. That's for sure.
Right.
Or inflation.
So following that, what do you guys have an idea what the future solution would be? And adding to that, do you see any other EOS-based blockchains with a different system that might have the solution to that problem?
I think that as it stands right now, I definitely would like to see a world in which there's a lot of different EOSIO chains that are operating at scale. But right now, we really have a situation in which you have the EOS mainnet, which is operating at a large scale, and then you have a bunch of really, really small chains. So it's hard to even compare them because one of the issues is that the EOS mainnet token is worth significantly more than any of these other tokens. So the network value is a lot higher. And the tokens that are created to pay for block producers are worth a lot more. That incentivizes more block producers. So there's this kind of economic question that is, the EOS mainnet is still by far the most economically productive place to produce blocks. And I think there's interesting experiments being done with governance on other chains, but we haven't really been, it's kind of comparing apples to oranges because we haven't really been able to see how those systems operate at scale or in the wild or when there's larger amounts of really money on the line. I think that, people are incentivized to either attack the system or manipulate the system or use the system to their benefit. They're more incentivized to do that when there's more money to be made doing so. And I think on a lot of these smaller chains, it's just not worth it right now for those actors because there's not that much money on the line. So I think that, we as a team, for a long time, we're only producing on the EOS mainnet, but more recently have started producing on other chains. And that's because we do believe that an EOSIO ecosystem is the future rather than any one chain to rule them all type of scenario. And I think it's really important that we do try different governance models. I mean, we've had tons of internal conversations about what governance model makes the most sense. What are the changes we'd like to see? Because the other thing you have to consider is that there's more inertia on the EOS mainnet. You know, that's a multi-billion-dollar network, so any major changes are going to be a lot harder to push through. You kind of saw this when EOS New York released their governance proposal. You know, that involves some very, very large sweeping changes to the system, and that's just going to be a lot harder to push something like that through than maybe making small changes. Whereas if there's a smaller network or a new network that gets launched, those networks have the opportunity to implement much bigger changes as compared to what we see in the EOS mainnet. So I think it's important to have all of them. We want to see radical experiments with other EOS.io chains, but we'd also like to see improvements on the mainnet. And there are certain things that I think are actually achievable, that realistic, that we could change on the mainnet that could help substantially.
Which other chains are you guys on, by the way?
Right now, we
really just Wax in terms of production.
Well,
So,
and
Wax?
Instar or Insights.
Oh, okay.
It goes by both of those.
Okay. So,
But we're involved in a couple other chains that are forming as well, like that aren't actually launched, they're figuring out how they're going to develop their governance models before they launch.
I see. So one of the things that I always had in mind, excuse me, when I was reading through the EOS white paper is that we should have block producers that run multiple chains, and they are kind of be like the connection between these two separate chains. Obviously, there's a concept of side chains within EOS, but like these sister chains still need a point of contact to kind of make the chains communicate. Have you guys thought about anything like that? Have you thought about creating a bridge between different EOS blockchains?
Go ahead, Aaron. I was going to say that I think that one of the so I've thought about that specific concept that you talk about.
Yeah.
One of the issues is that if you want to have the same so you'd have to have the same block producers running both chains in order for the block producers serving as a bridge to be considered kind of trustless. Because if you have different sets of block producers running the chains, then there is some different level of trust involved in that transfer from one chain to another.
Yeah.
But what could happen is that the exact same block producers that are running EOS today could spin up another chain in order to kind of increase the capacity.
Yeah.
And it would all be one network. The block producers would serve as the bridge between the two chains. And if they're elected on one chain, they'd be elected on the other. Like there could be something kind of interesting there, but it would require the same set of block producers in order to kind of have the same trust model across both chains.
So same set of top 21 or top whatever block producers.
Yeah, basically the same set of
Okay.
block producers who are actually producing blocks.
Yeah, and that's one way to go about this kind of thing, and there are other models that don't require the same producers. That's the hard thing when we start talking about IBC, basically, inter-blockchain communication, is that there are so many different ways to approach it, and right now they're all ideas, and as far as we know, not many of them are built out, but it is going to require at least cooperation between some entities on both chains to be able to get that sort of thing set up, or otherwise it's going to require like spearheading by an organization like Block One that's like, this is the standard and you can adopt it if you want for your chain to communicate with the others who have adopted it. It's just as much of a kind of organizational and political issue as it is a technical issue, and really none of that has been proven in any capacity, I don't believe.
Okay, I see. Okay, so that was a lot of heavy questions that we delve into. So let's change the subject for a little bit before we get back into the the more dense topics. So you guys recently released Anchor. It kind of existed in the previous form as EOS Voter, but it's kind of your first official wallet, I would say. So do you guys want to talk a little bit about that? I just downloaded it. I just play around with it. I think it looks great. It reminds me a lot of Steemsurfer. at least a little bit of it. NSC has Ledger support, so that's awesome. So yeah, tell us more about it.
We had launched EOS Voter, which is commonly referred to as the Greymass wallet,
Yes.
within like a week of the EOS mainnet launch, and it kind of
EOS
served
Voter
as our prototype.
just isn't very catchy name for people.
Right. Well, honestly, we weren't sure if we were going to be doing this for that long, building wallet technology, basically.
Yeah.
But it got us
So
hooked in, and
yeah, I mean, EOS Voter was something that you guys, I wasn't on the team there, but you guys really built out of necessity in the ecosystem. Like, you kind of spun it up in response to the fact that there wasn't any good wallets around the time of mainnet launch.
right. And it was a matter of trust. Like, people, when the chain first launched, didn't know what wallet to use because there were wallets coming out by all of these organizations that nobody had ever heard of.
Yeah.
So when both Scott and I were like, let's do a wallet and kind of leverage the trust that we've built through Steem and these other networks, and give people something that they can, if they trusted us on Steem with Vessel, the wallet that we built for Steem,
Yeah.
then theoretically some people are going to trust us on EOS. So it was, like Myles said, kind of out of necessity. We needed something for the network so it could activate that people could trust. So we built it out, and the name was crappy because, like we said, it wasn't, the plan wasn't to be a full-fledged product in the beginning. It was more like, okay, EOS needs this, let's do it. And so we started building it out, and we got so just deep into building it that we never took the time to rebrand it until now. So we, over the past year or so, we've been working to brand it, come up with logos, come up with new interfaces, come up with new features, and basically rebuild what we had worked on in the first 8 months or so and kind of do it over again in a more proper fashion. So that way we could keep working with it as we go forward. And we just, like 2 or 3 weeks ago, released our first release candidate, which is kind of like the final beta before we hit a 1.0 stage. And we're rapidly kind of approaching the point where it's going to be, we're going to tell everybody to stop using our old wallet and move over to this new one, because this is what we're developing moving forward.
Very nice. So why the name Anchor? Where did that come from?
Well, it kind of plays back on the Steem wallet, Vessel.
Okay.
And
I see.
it's kind of a nautical theme going on right now.
I see. I see.
And the reason that one was called Vessel is because it was acting as a container for your private keys. It was kind of this weird metaphor about it being your boat in these choppy waters that is crypto. So we kind of played further along off of that, and the next version originally on Steem was going to be called Anchor because anchors provide security. Like they keep your boat where it's supposed to be.
Right.
And so we kind of are playing on that, as in this is going to keep your private keys where they need to be. This is your anchor. This is your rock. It keeps you safe.
I love that. That's a beautiful metaphor. I never really thought about it like that. But yeah, I've been playing around with it a little bit. Again, it has religious wall support. The only question I would have is, does it connect with desktop dApps like Scatter does?
It does, but it does
Okay.
not connect like Scatter. We set out to build our own signing protocol with Anchor. It's a new open protocol. We've published a draft paper based on it, and without getting too technical, it is a way to do what Scatter does, except in a different way that allows more possibilities, we believe. So it was kind of technology that we experimented again with in Steem that we have now kind of evolved and brought to Anchor. So we kind of have this whole new suite of stuff that we're working on. Anything that works with Scatter won't immediately work with Anchor, but the developers should be able to move it over and use it somewhat easily.
Okay, I see.
And we hope to start pushing that towards dApps soon, so that way, you can use Nudex or whatever your favorite dApps are with Anchor.
Or discussions.
And it might be
that.
useful to talk. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, I was just kind of plugging ourselves with discussions that have. Once we had that
Yep.
integrated. But go on.
Yeah,
You
that's
were,
definitely a possibility.
yeah. But
I
Miles,
was just
yeah.
going to say, Aaron, it might be useful for you to talk a little bit about the difference between how Anchor interacts with dApps versus Scatter.
Sure. Um, so I think the easiest way to put it is the way that Scatter works is it kind of runs a web server on your computer that dApps can talk to. It is a two-way conversation between your wallet and the dApp, which they can send messages back and forth. Our method is not two-way communication, it is just one-way communication. The dApp can send messages to your wallet, but your wallet can't directly just talk to the dApp. The dApp is not allowed to hear anything from your wallet. So kind of the idea behind that is that it lets you, it works better on kind of mobile environments. It works within things like QR codes. It does most of the same things that Scatter allows, but in our opinion, it is a more secure way to do things. Because honestly, I don't trust dApps, and I don't want dApps having kind of this crazy access to my wallet.
Yeah. I see, I see. I mean, you mentioned it works better on mobile. Are you guys gonna release a mobile version of it soonish?
We're playing with mobile. We
Okay.
haven't committed to anything yet.
Okay.
You
Fair
can
enough.
see on GitHub we have some developer libraries that are getting some attention that are all focused around mobile.
I see, I
So
see.
we're kind of laying the foundation so that way if we want to do a mobile app, we absolutely can. But if somebody else wants to use our learnings to build a mobile app, they can also use that code.
I see. Okay, cool. So we just kind of passed through the. It's been a calm bit of water with our anchor in the ground, but we gotta lift that off now and into choppier waters again. So we recently have this thing, EIDOS, so EDOS. I think that's how you pronounce it. It's basically, I call it the DDoS, the EOS DDoS. So yeah, that's been causing everybody headache, from users to dApp developers. My friends over at Blockbase, they were doing air grab, and no one could sign up because of the CPU problems. So, what's your take on that? And you guys actually released something that's pretty interesting. And why don't you talk about that as well?
Sure. It's super interesting. The kind of model that they developed where you can use your excess
Sorry,
mining. I think they should stop using that word, but
you cut out a little bit. Can you just repeat that sentence?
sure. I'm not sure where I cut out exactly,
You
but
say super interesting. They were using some kind of model, and they should stop.
all right. Yeah, it's interesting because they are using a model that lets you use your extra CPU resources to get tokens. And they're calling it mining, but I'd argue it's not really mining because mining has a purpose behind it, and this kind of doesn't. Um, but so we have a lot of users on the network now that are either A, using their own resources, their own stake EOS CPU, or they have now completely rented out all of the EOS on Rex, which is another headache. But just all of these users are now encouraged to send these transactions as much as possible, which, as kind of a general user who's been on EOS since the beginning, I think those are the people that are annoyed right now, simply
Yeah.
because it's different than what they were used to. You know, people used to be able to stake 5 EOS and then kind of use EOS a couple times a day and not have any problems, and that's not the case right now.
Yeah.
But this is how the system was kind of designed. Not saying it's a good decision.
Yeah.
And we're going to have to change kind of how the resource model works in order to let more than just people with hundreds of EOS staked use the system.
Do you think this is gonna happen more often? Because like one of the very negative effects of EDOS is that they actually managed to get a lot of press for this, and I'm afraid that's gonna inspire copycats.
It might.
That's gonna,
Coinbase wrote a whole article that got
yeah,
circulated
everybody's
online,
talking about it.
Yeah.
It's like
I
it's a genius
I
marketing move.
yeah, I mean, I think it is interesting also just in the sense that it's a very real world test of where the holes are in EOS in terms
Yeah.
of the technology, in terms of the resource model. We've seen some people do some really interesting things with this with this EIDOS project. So I think from that perspective, it's good that we learn where the vulnerabilities are, where the flaws are, what can be exploited, and all of that. And hopefully that'll help us figure out how to make the system better. The system
Yeah.
launched with certain
Mm.
parameters, Rex launched with certain parameters. Those might not be the right ones. I know Aaron's been talking about issues with the resource model since prior. It was one of the first conversations I had with him was that. So there's a lot of things that could be tweaked and changed and improved. And I think um, events like this are actually what help us figure out how to do that.
Yeah, it's pushing us forward, and like we can't drag our feet any longer. We actually have to really talk about this stuff now, and I think that's why why you see people saying this is good for EOS, is because from the perspective of EOS, it is good for it. Like it has presented a general kind of adoption headache that needs to be addressed.
Yeah.
And the people that are upset with that this is going on are the people who have been around and, like I said, using the system. That this is out of the norm for them now.
Yeah. I mean, I was
So
definitely not happy with
yeah,
that fact. I mean, because like once you're stuck, it's kind of silly because you can't
yeah,
stick more EOS to get more. Even if you do, is you have to stick so much more, and it becomes like, okay, well, I'm gonna go to the Rex market, and there's nothing on the Rex market.
yep,
It's created huge frustration for like the
yeah,
everyday user. So
Well,
yeah,
I think
and
it's definitely frustrating for the end users, but it also, provided that we can find sort of systemic fixes, or
yeah,
we can help alleviate this problem at the base level. I think what it also speaks to is in the future, I would hope that end users aren't worried about resources at
yeah,
all. I
yeah,
hope they're not even thinking about it. The idea that a user should be thinking about how much should I be staking, or should I go to
yeah,
Rex and purchase some additional capacity, for power users or early adopters like ourselves, I think that's fine. But when we think about big applications with thousands of users, I think it's important that that's all done on the back end, whether it's by the dApp itself, by the wallet, by the service provider, whatever it may be. And that's part of the thinking behind the Greymass Fuel project.
yeah. No, I agree. You brought that up. I was gonna talk to you guys about that. So yeah, I mean, we were seeing, it was it's sort of a good time that this happened now because, Block One just released the update not too long ago that allows applications to pay for user CPU. So this is like ever since the CPU problem happened, we have seen dApps like Everpedia, like Karma, that came out and say, okay, we're gonna cover user resources, and we recently launched our beta version of the discussion as well, where we covered the cost of the user CPU. you know, I think that's the future we gotta move to. I think like that should have been the thinking from day one, as users of application. I don't want to if one of the biggest appeals of EOS that is that you don't have to think about transaction costs, right? And if you are trying to force these technical issues onto the users to make users think about it, it's the same thing. You're just forcing these burdens onto the user, which doesn't make sense.
hmm
So I think the future is dApp's gonna pay, and you guys came out with your solution, Greymass Fuel. Do you want to explain to the people how this works and how you guys see this could help with the application developers?
Yeah, absolutely. We have been kind of experimenting slowly with this new feature. I think I always copy and paste the name of it because it's weird and in all capitals, but it's only bill first authorizer, I believe is the name
Yeah,
of it.
yeah.
And was a feature that came out probably like a month, maybe a month and a half ago. And since then, we've been experimenting with it, playing with it, seeing how it works, and just in general, kind of getting a grasp on how this can change things. And during that time, we had a few ideas about how we could use it. And as soon as this, the mining situation that we had just talked about started coming about, and users who were used to using the network now could not, we decided to take that knowledge and kind of wrap it into a project. And that's kind of when Greymass Fuel started to come about. It is, right now, it is part of our API infrastructure. And it is a layer that lets dApps submit transactions on behalf of the users. Like, you know, for you guys, it would be submitting some content of some kind. And as long as that transaction is submitted with the proper fields, basically, our API layer can generate an additional signature that then covers the resource costs for the user. We've designed this system so that way it works in two ways. The first way is the way that we were just kind of talking about, where the individual dApp can cover the costs of their users, and they can kind of configure the rules, and the dApp provides the resources, and we kind of just facilitate the transactions. That we're hoping to turn this into kind of a for-profit business model that can help us cover the costs of our infrastructure, so we can expand upon it. And the second model is kind of the Greymass Fuel public good, which is we're setting up the account itself to also be able to sound transactions, but it's not for a specific dApp. It is for anyone.
Wouldn't people very easily abuse that?
Yeah, and we have checks and filters in place to kind of get a grasp on that. We're kind of doing it like Blocks led the way doing, where we're offering 5 free transactions per day, per user, or per account. And we also have a limited set of actions that can be performed. Our APIs do a lot of analysis of the transactions to make sure that they're not abusive. And then as long as they check out, we sign it and we cover the resource costs. And the EOS that covers these costs for these like free transactions for any app basically is all driven on donations. Right now I've delegated a chunk of EOS to that account, and another community member has as well. So there's 2 of us that are currently donating, I think it's like 5,500 EOS to CPU for this contract to process these transactions.
And have you guys seen someone taking you guys up on it and start using it? Or not yet?
We have seen developers working on it to integrate it into their products. And so we've seen like the test transactions coming through from a couple various groups.
I see.
But it's not something that a user, like just, you know, your average user who has a wallet, they can't just pick it up and use it immediately. It's going to take dApps or wallets or block explorers or websites to kind of integrate this smart contract approach.
One more quick question on that before we move on to the next big wave of topics. How do you say you plan to monetize it to help you fund the BP? What's the kind of the basic thinking there?
We're not sure yet. We know that this is a valuable service, because one of the big things with integrating this, like, it's not easy work. And expecting every dApp to build their own server infrastructure to be able to pay for their users' transactions costs it's a tall order.
I see. So most likely what you're gonna do?
That'll take a month.
Sorry,
did I cut out again?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, at the end there.
So just to add, I think it's important to clarify that like the second half of what Aaron described, which is the account that accepts delegations and, you know, rate limits 5 transactions per day per user, that that part is not, we're not planning to monetize that. That's more of a public good.
Yeah.
But the first part you described, which is the service for applications, you can think of that really as a premium service that we leverage our infrastructure and our expertise to do all of the hard work and offer this kind of turnkey solution to the app. So that is how we monetize it.
I see. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. I would, it's probably not exactly the same, but it's similar to what EOS Canada is doing with Diffuse, I would say, in a way.
Kinda, yeah.
Okay.
They have a couple of these value add features, and I'm sure now that if they have been watching us with the Greymass Fuel release yesterday, I would not be surprised if they release their own version of this at some point. You know, it's a valuable feature that I'm sure their customers would want.
Yeah, for sure. Especially given how they already have, you know, a product like Diffuse, which, you know, means they have existing client base.
Yep, exactly.
And you saw like Dunya Labs had their product Eclipse that kind of was doing a similar thing before the release of 1.8.
Sorry, what labs?
And so Dunya, Dunya.
Is that
they're based out of India actually, but they mostly worked with Chinese-based dApps. But Eclipse.1 is their URL, I believe, for the service that I'm talking about.
Oh, so it's very similar to Greymass Fuel.
In terms of how it works, it's quite different. But I think now that 1.8 is out, they'll probably build something more in line with Greymass Fuel.
I see.
And yeah, like Aaron said, I wouldn't be surprised if a number of different parties created something like this.
Gotcha. Okay, so that is awesome. I also go check out Greymass Fuel. I'm gonna have all the links down below when if you guys are listening in the YouTube video. I'll have the links down on the YouTube box. And this topic just came out today, and since I'm always gonna have you guys on, I want to hear your thoughts on it. So Block One just came out saying that they will start voting with their 90 million EOS stake. So what do you guys make of that? Do you guys, do you guys think you're in a good position to receive some of those votes?
I mean, I'd like to hope so, but I think everybody would like to hope so. So we're not making any assumptions one way or the other right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's big news.
I think it's like so I think we're all happy to hear this, right? Because there was a while where I think some of us suspected that Block One's legal, they're really careful with legal issues. So I thought maybe that would prevent them from voting at all. But I'm very happy to hear this. I think they have the opportunity to be an extremely productive and positive force in the ecosystem. But the big question that remains now that they've announced that they're going to vote is like, what kind of criteria are they going to use to vote? What are they looking for? What direction do they want the chain to go in? What does an ideal block producer look like in their eyes? And that's a big open question. So I think we'll get a better sense of that hopefully in the future. And hopefully we'll be on their voting list.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, Block One's gonna come out with their voice app, dApp. So obviously they want to vote up BPs. It's gonna give them a robust infrastructure. They would handle the transaction that's hopefully gonna come from the application. So yeah, I don't foresee them going with these nonsense BPs that don't add much in terms of technical development. So I think if you look at Brock Pierce's proxy list, of which you guys are on, I think that's a pretty good indicator of the votes, the nodes they might vote for.
We'll have to see. And hopefully, like Myles said, it'll provide some positive momentum away from the direction things are heading right now.
Do you think they're gonna come out with a drastic change to the governance system and try to use their the voting power to push that through?
It might.
Possible.
Yeah, I
if
think.
You look at what Brendan especially has been saying on Twitter over the last few months.
Yeah.
it's a little bit hard to get a read on what he thinks is the best direction for governance. Kind
Yeah.
of with Dan too. So that's why I kind of say until they start actively voting, I don't really know what direction they're going to be pushing things. But yeah, I mean, it's entirely possible that they might, for example, take elements of the recent governance proposal that Dan published and try to get those implemented.
And that would be a great change in direction. I mean, I would like to see vocal stakeholders pushing for what they want. Because right now we have stakeholders who are voting for the people in control of consensus, and
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I don't hear calls for like, hey, this is our top priority,
Mm-hmm.
and those large stakeholders should be letting the block producers know what their top priorities are. I mean, this is, if you look at like local elections everywhere else in the world, that's how they function. The people tell the government
Yeah.
what they want.
Yeah. I mean, that's the without getting too deep into it, that's the sort of the
Yeah.
Achilles heels of these proof of stake system, right? Where you don't have individuals voting, but you have
Hmm.
whoever has the biggest bag of tokens, gets to decide basically.
Yeah. And I think anything that ends up being proposed in the near future, or that has been proposed recently,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to see aspects of those proposals deployed to EOS and other chains. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is all one big great experiment, and we need more than one running at a time.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so I don't think we have too many Q&As. We do have one individual who left me a question to ask you guys, and he wants to let you know he's a huge fan of you guys and your work on the blockchain. And he happens to be our lead developer, Bootlegger. So he's
Awesome.
unfortunately unable to join us today, but he wanted to ask this question. Let me just pull it up. So, how do you feel about the state of full history nodes? As I'm aware, there are very few providers left in this space, being yourself, EOS Sweden, EOS Flare, and Defuse/EOS Canada. The latter of these two use proprietary solutions. As far as I'm aware, no other are running public-facing nodes/APIs that utilize reliable and open source solutions. Where do you see this headed in the future?
That is a topic that is probably ranks in the top 3 of things we've talked about internally.
Okay, okay.
It's a super interesting topic. We have an odd viewpoint, I think, because we are both infrastructure and API providers, and we've built a wallet, and wallets really kind of rely on history.
Mm-hmm.
So we may value it more than many others, but I honestly don't see a world without public history,
Mm-hmm.
and we had hoped that, that would be part of our value add as a block producer,
Mm-hmm.
and it'd be enough to keep us in a good paying position. And over time, that has not turned out to be absolutely true.
Right.
But the network needs them.
Yeah, for sure.
You should be able to look back and pull last year's like what transactions you did for tax purposes even.
Yeah.
um, people should have the right to access this data. It's not like you can't find it for any other blockchain. It just
Yeah.
because it's huge for EOS doesn't mean we shouldn't do it.
Yeah. It's like
So
is this thing that should be public good? And I think that kind of gets to the crux of the question, which is something that should be a public good, but right now the solutions are all privatized, you know.
yeah,
So,
and I mean we're still running the deprecated version 1 plugin
mm-hmm.
for a number of reasons, which we don't have to dive into right now. But
Yeah.
uh, we we think that there should be open source solutions that are better than this one.
Yeah.
We've been talking internally for a long time now about building our own, and if the way if things keep going the way they are right now, we'll end up building our own solution and most likely making it open source. So that way, this can be distributed and we can have more than just a handful of us running it.
Mm-hmm.
Because people need this data. It's their data.
Yeah, yeah. That's the, I don't know. That's kind of the. It really should be something that's, you know, taken into account when deciding which BP gets paid, but unfortunately, it's not the case
Yeah,
currently.
it should at least be a part of it. And the day that we have some sort of alternate system to help keep these online, then maybe it doesn't have to be a part of it anymore, whether that's a worker proposal system or something else.
Hmm.
But I think right now we only have one option, and that's support BPs that offer it. Um, yeah,
Yeah. Again, sorry
we're
for the.
open to other ideas, though. It's just that's what exists.
Yeah, for sure. He does have a few more questions.
Cool.
I'm just gonna cherry pick one or two, because again, he's a huge fan of you guys, so just want to let you doubly know.
Well, we appreciate it. The community support has always been just unbelievable, and we really do appreciate it, whether it's on Reddit or Twitter or
Yeah,
any of the other platforms where people reach out to us. It's very well.
yeah. So following up on that, he's afraid. Well, I guess I'm paraphrasing him. He's asking if you guys never obtain top 21 again, would you consider pulling out of EOS entirely? Just kind of, if, you know, if you can't sustain yourself from the block producer pay, would you be forced to fold and kind of get out EOS entirely?
I think we would have to shift our priorities around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's already tough enough where we're at right now.
Yeah,
We're a six-man team currently, and we have a couple other people external of that we work with. But
yeah,
no one earns a living wage. That's 100% sure. We if we fell so far out that we couldn't collect rewards at all, we would have to shift our business model. It doesn't mean it would be outside of EOS. It just means we wouldn't be a block producer and we wouldn't be thinking about these governance topics like we do so much.
yeah, yeah,
Whether it's resource consumption or vote buying or any of the topics that we spend a lot of time thinking about and writing about,
yeah,
um, we'd have to be focused on our business that generates revenue that then keeps us in.
yeah. Definitely. And on that pretty depressing note, no, I really hope you got the best for you guys. Because again, like as someone, as a team that's really involved with the EOS blockchain, that's building projects on top of it, and I think all the other projects as well, like we rely on the tools that you guys build, and it's kind of terrible that you guys are not getting paid more to so you can expand your team and give us more goodies to develop on.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't think we're gonna just disappear or anything.
Hmm.
So it's not like a super dire situation. It's just,
Yeah.
it is, it is a sad situation.
Well, let us know. Uh, sorry. Let us know what else you guys are working on, or we could expect to see you in the future, and hopefully, the next time you join us, we could be a little more happy after
Right?
the rough waters has passed us by.
We'll just anchor, and we'll wear out or like sit out this storm, and we'll come out the other side.
Exactly. So yeah, so Anchor is the thing you guys are working on. Greymass is another thing. Anything else you want to let people know that you guys are working on, and where should people find you, etc.
We are working on a lot of stuff. I mean, the two that you mentioned, we've also been firing up a podcast and a newsletter,
Yep.
and we have a new website coming out.
Very
We
nice.
have a few unannounced projects. We're working on developer tools and publishing everything on GitHub, so you can find a lot of it there. But primarily, the way that you can get a hold of us is going to either be through our website, which is greymass.com,
Yep.
or on Twitter as Greymass. Um, or on Telegram, which I think it's t.me/Greymass.
Don't worry, I'll include all the links in the
Awesome.
description, so make sure people can find you.
Yep.
Okay, I want to thank you guys very much for coming on. It was a fantastic conversation, so thank you, Aaron, and thank you, Miles.
Yeah, thanks for having us on.
Yeah, and I hope I can hear from you guys again in the future. have you guys come
Yep.
back on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Feel free to reach out and we'll see if it matches up with our schedule.
Fantastic. Okay, and with that, I want to thank you guys for listening, and I'll talk to you guys next time. Ciao.